In their moment before a painful death, he saves them from that. He doesn't change history in the fact that what they did or what was done to them beforehand or what happened around them. It's at that moment before they're basically murdered, right? He takes them from that moment and switches them away to kind of paradise he created for them. So he gives many examples. And what's great is if you don't know these names, you want to look them up, right? And you learn about these people. He talks about Jesse Washington. Highly recommend you Google him later on. He was burned at the stake in Waco, Texas. It was kind of like a picnic for those people. There was hundreds of people around him, and he was burned at the stake for, the crime of being with a white woman. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, they were considered spies who shared nuclear secrets with the Soviets, and they were electrocuted with really not having convincing proof of what they did. The Zong Massacre, that was a slave ship that actually, this once again, these are real cases, but it gets into the history of it, and it's beautiful, where the slave ship, which had brought in many slaves, they had a big cargo of sick slaves, or soon-to-be slaves, and the insurance would not pay for slaves who died due to illness, but they would pay for slaves who drowned. So they drowned them all. Right? And that's a true historical event. Jesse Washington is a true historical event. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, true historical event. And we learn about many more. Dr. Silver and Taraji sort of figures in the book who are the foils to Simon's work. I'm not going to get into them right now, but they're trying to do the opposite of what Simon's doing. And then Elena, his wife, winds up helping Simon, or Simon, and Segundo, and his best friend Zeke to go on these missions and to save these people. And so that's what I'm going to get into the second part. I'll have about 45 minutes. And I'll get into this idea of we. I'm talking about storytelling, but then also we. Because I have to answer those questions for them in a way that flows. But we can work by ourselves all we want, and how much are we going to get done? Right? How much are we going to create? How much are we going to think? Or we can be collaborative. Right? We can work together. We can work with our strengths. And we, as I mentioned in the book, is the most beautiful word there is. But it's also, Zeke mentions, is also the ugliest word on earth. Right? So we commit these huge atrocities, and they don't happen with just one person. It's people working together to commit them. Or we can work together to save people. Right? And talking about saving people, it's a fictional narrative, what Simon does. But what Alfredo Villa does as the author is he actually saves these people in real life. He saves their stories. Because if we're not familiar with them, then they do disappear through historical erasure. But if we read about them, right, we're remembering them, and we're trying to, hopefully avoid these sorts of things in the future. So I'm going to have to talk about we, and the most beautiful word in the world. So some engineers, the idea is maybe they're a little more introvert, and then I think, well, I don't even know how to story to tell, or I'm not good at storytelling. And I would tell everyone that everyone who has a name has a story, right? You get that name somehow, and there's a story behind that, how your parents decided to name you. There's a story how your parents met. There's a story how you came into the world. So everyone has a story. And then you think, well, I don't have many good stories. Well, in literature, we talk about the ivory tower versus the sacred fount. Ivory tower is that place where we escape to get away from everyone else, so we can be by ourselves, so we can focus, so we can think, so we can write, so we can create without people bothering us. The sacred fount is the kind of the opposite, where we need to go out into the world and we need to experience things, because that's how we learn about the world and get experience so we can write about it. So really, we need to create a balance, right? We don't want to always isolate ourselves in silos in our desks, our cubicles, our offices, working by ourselves. We need to go out and collaborate, talk with people, work with people, make mistakes. That's okay, but that's how you learn. And then also start by listening. That's how you become a better storyteller. You listen to the people who you think are good storytellers, and you find out, well, what was good about their storytelling? What did I like about their story? And start borrowing from that, right? And start building your own techniques for storytelling. So what happens when you don't tell your story? And I like this quote by Maya Angelou. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you, right? We all have stories. If you don't let those stories out, then we're not only sharing with the world, we're not creating relationships, but we're also not teaching other people from our own mistakes, from our own ideas. And so we need to have that collaboration. So I have a bunch of information that I'm going to have to parse out those questions. What should Hispanics do? Da, 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 da. And I'm building it off my experience as a literature professor, a language professor, and particularly this book. I'm not going to get into all of those today because it's not enough time, but I'll be working this next month to get this talk done. Once again, my audience is different. I can't just read to them, and I certainly can't be a literature professor. I have to be a storyteller, and I have to engage them so they understand, okay, I'm an engineer, but how can I work on these issues of diversity through storytelling, right? So that's my goal for next month. I think my time is about up, so thank you very much. Are there any questions? Or comments?
They give you any specific context as to how they're working with? Are they working with his fellow Hispanic engineers, or what exactly do they want help with?
Yeah, you know, that's a good question. I'm gonna have to write my contact there and try to get some more information. It's a group called HOLA. I'll have to look it up against like Hispanic organization or something. It's a group of Hispanic engineers within this firm. So I'll have to see that. And he actually said, well, this is who they think they're bringing. And there's